Everyone's out here buying rentals, chasing like $200 a month in cash flow and wondering why they're still broke. Stop. There is a much simpler, faster way to build wealth in real estate, and it is called transactional funding. And in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how it works. So a real brief description of what is transactional funding. So really in this instance, you are providing escrow backed funds for, say, a real estate operation. And typically you have your money out on, it could be as short as, say, 1 day all the way up to about 3 months. That's kind of how our operation works. Some are a little longer, but ours kind of caps out at 3 months. And who is your client? Again, they're real estate operations. So it's going to be your wholesalers in real estate as well as your investors in real estate. And why does it exist? One word: speed. So the speed at which these transactions have to transact is typically you could get a request where it's maybe got a 1-2 day lead time. So they need funds within the next couple days or next 48 hours. That's actually not necessarily uncommon. Unfortunately, that comes up quite a bit. So speed is super crucial because your traditional lenders, they're not equipped for this type of funding. They're not going to fund you that quickly. So that's where speed comes into play big time. Also, it frees up capital for, say, your operational expenses. So in a wholesaling operation, for example, they are one big marketing machine. They're spending their money on marketing dollars. So they're getting lead lists. They're skip tracing those lists. They are doing like maybe some active income or inbound lead generation, stuff like that. So it is one big marketing machine that they're just trying to acquire the next contract. So that's where a lot of their money is being spent. It's very operationally heavy on that. So say they get to a point where they do need to put, say, like EMD down on a contract to lock it up. That's going to be taken away from their marketing dollars. And I'll go over why this kind of makes sense here in a minute. But as far as comparison, so rentals, you got your rentals versus transactional funding. So we're going to do this one by one. It's going to be like one deal comparison to another deal. So from rental side, you've got $200 per month on average that you're trying to get per deal. So say you've got $200 per month. With that, you do have some long-term hold risk associated with it. So keep in mind that I love real estate, guys. I own real estate. However, there is some long-term hold risk where if you're needing to sell within a specific time frame, you have no idea what the market's going to do. You have no idea if that's going to be a good time to sell when you do need to sell. So there is some risk there. So you got to keep that in mind. There's also tenants and repairs. Again, people just don't want, there's some people that just don't want to deal with that headache. There's also the financing headaches. If you're going the traditional route, getting a bank loan is a pain, guys. And if you're getting DSCR loans, things of that nature, it is slow moving process. And there's headaches that are involved with that. Again, if you're going more of a creative route, you can alleviate some of that. But you compare that to a transactional funding business, and per deal, you're going to average $2,000 to $8,000. That's a pretty significant difference there. Also, your funds, on average, you're usually in and out, say a double close or a seller carryback type deal. You're in and out within 24 to 72 hours. Now, EMDs, they're a little longer and stretched out, but keep in mind, it's got a very short time horizon on that. So no property ownership, that's another big thing. Also, there's no financing hurdles because you're not acquiring an asset. So there's no financing hurdles there. So instead of, say, 10 doors where you've got $200 a month, you're hoping for maybe $2,000 to $5,000 a month in cash flow. Whereas if you did 10 deals averaging this amount, you're going to be doing more like $20,000 to $40,000 a month. That's a huge difference. So that's why this business is awesome. So who exactly is this business for? If you're wanting to start up a transactional funding business, it's usually your former W-2 that they're trying to pivot into real estate. That's a good person. Also, your burned out landlord. Also, people that are capital rich but maybe don't have enough time. But I would argue with that. Just keep in mind, this business does take some time to start up. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. Keep in mind, it's like anything else that's good. You do need to spend the time. It's not a get rich quick scheme. So just keep that in mind. And then it's also really anybody that is just wanting to have exposure to real estate without owning the asset itself. So there's many other people that this is a good fit for, but that's kind of just a quick example snapshot. So when you're talking about transactional funding, really there's three main transactions that we're working with. So you've got EMD, you've got double close, and then you've got your seller carryback. This seller carryback, it's also known as like mortgage method. It's also known as stack method. So just keep that in mind. We'll just go for simple terms, seller carryback. So EMD, we're going to go through these one by one. So overall, you've got, say, a high level view of a real estate transaction. So you've got your buyer here, and then you've got the seller of the home. And then you guys come to an agreement. You have a purchase and sale agreement there. Then there's EMD that's put down. So it's a good faith deposit that you're actually going to fulfill your contract, your obligations to purchase. That goes into an escrow period of time to where that EMD is actually going into an escrow account at title. Within this escrow period, this is also where you do like your inspections on the property, things like that. And then you get to the point where you got your clear to close, you're funded, everything's good to go. You have your close of escrow, and then that asset is actually transferred, the title, from the seller to the buyer. Now that's your traditional transaction. Now in wholesale, what you're doing is you're getting that property under contract. Say you've got a 14-day inspection period here. Within that inspection period, you're going to find an end buyer to where you can actually assign your interest in that contract. So within that 14 days, you're going to find your end buyer and assign it to them. That's wholesale. You're really just flipping paper. You're not going to own that asset, but keep in mind, you still have to put down that EMD up front. Now there's wholesalers where more of an all cash offer. On those cash deals, typically they have some leeway on how much EMD they're putting down. But guys, I would argue if you want more serious offers, you really should be putting down more serious EMDs, not only just if you're doing creative finance deals, but also if you're doing cash offers. It does make your offer look much more serious, makes it a little more credible from that standpoint as well. But so typically an EMD is going to be on average like 1% of the actual purchase price. On average, you're going to be, say, $2,000 to $5,000. And what happens with this EMD is, again, the wholesaler is going to put the EMD down temporarily. Then the end buyer is going to fund EMD or the remainder of the EMD once that inspection period is closed. And then at the end, the investor gets their payout in the form of their assignment fee. It's kind of like their commission. Again, remembering that wholesalers, they are one big marketing machine. They need to be feeding that marketing machine. So they don't want to be stripping funds from that to fund these EMDs, because say on the low end, they've got 5 deals a month. So say this has got 5 deals a month, 5 times 5, that's 25. They're just going to have $25,000 of cash that's out there just sitting in escrow accounts, which on average is going to be 30 days plus. That's going to be a killer to their operations, to the funds that could be actually feeding their operations, their marketing machine. So that's where a transactional funder really makes sense. It's really for scaling wholesale investors. The next one, so double close. So what is a double close? Instead of assigning this contract, what you're actually going to do is that you're going to still have that same inspection period where you're finding the end buyer. But you're going to come down here, and instead of assigning, you're going to have a completely separate purchase and sale agreement. And then you're going to sell it to them on that. So ideally what happens is this is going to be at the same title company, and then they're going to close on the exact same day. So you're actually going to own that asset for, say, a few hours before it's actually sold. It's going to be actually recorded before it's sold to the next buyer. Now, why on earth would somebody do this? This makes sense when, say, your assignment fee is pretty significant. So say your assignment fee, maybe you've got the property, you've got it at a really good purchase point to where your ARV or your after repair value is a really decent gap. So you could put maybe a 20K assignment fee, 50K assignment fee. There's some assignment fees that are pretty large. Now what happens there is if you're assigning a contract and you put that as your commission, people are going to see that and think, holy cow, are you kidding me? I'm not paying that. And then they're going to try to snake the deal from you and walk around you. So to avoid that, you double close, because they're not going to see that assignment fee. With these situations, if they're willing to purchase it and it makes sense for their cash flow perspective, why hinder that by tacking on an assignment fee that's going to deter them from doing that? So that's where that comes into play. Also, it increases your credibility, because with this, again, you're being recorded on the deed from your purchasing entity. In this situation, it's going to have a track record. You're going to have credibility from a cash buyer perspective. So when people look into your entity, they're like, oh, this guy's actually serious. He's actually taken down houses after houses. So that's good from a credibility standpoint. That brings us to our third transaction. So third transaction, this is going to be more from an investor side of the business. So this is going to be where they come in actually acquiring the asset itself. So this is a seller carryback. So the seller carryback, how that works is this is how you could get into a property and purchase it with zero money out of your own pocket. So what you do is this investor is going to come out here and get a DSCR loan. Then we are going to fund the down payment. So the transactional funding funds that down payment. And how this works is, say you've got a purchase price of 200K. And with that 200K, your DSCR lender, again, DSCR, it's a debt service coverage ratio loan. It's really based on the performance of the asset. It's not based on your income. So it's asset-based performance. That's how you qualify for a DSCR loan. So DSCR loans, say you've got 75% LTV. With a 75% LTV, that brings that where this institutional lenders are going to bring 150. And that brings us to 200 minus 150. That means the transactional funds, we would be bringing $50,000 to the table in that instance. So you've got a situation here. Maybe the seller, say their underlying loan, they owe $100 or $100,000. So say this seller has a loan still on the property for 100K. So we got 100K here. So that means they've got 50% equity in the properties. If they were to receive the cash, they would receive 100,000. Now, in this situation, you negotiate terms to where the seller is willing to, in this situation, actually carry a note on the property. So what you're doing in this instance is the seller's willing to carry back full equity that he has in the property. Now, again, you can work with the numbers on this and make it make sense for each party. But for example purposes, say they're willing to actually carry back that full amount of equity that they have in the property. So we've got $100,000 carryback. This is going to create a second lien position on the property. And that carryback is going to come here. And one, it's going to pay off the transactional funds here. So out of that 100K that's coming back to the investor, it's going to say it's going to be the principal 50,000 plus the fees averaging probably around 5,000. So say 55 is coming back here, is going to come back to this transactional funder. And then this investor, out of that equity, they're going to be getting like 45 grand coming back in their pocket. So they're actually getting paid to purchase this house, which we've had many instances where some investors are getting paid 20K to purchase a house. Some they're just getting in for zero down. There's some where they're actually having to bring some money to the table but it's still like probably less than 5% of the, well, most instances it's less than 5% of the purchase price. So this is a really killer strategy if you're looking to scale your portfolio. But keep in mind, this is a very complex transaction. There's a lot of moving parts, but as a transactional funder, if you can solve this solution for people, getting them linked with the appropriate DSCR lenders that are aware of how these type of transactions work, they're aware of your involvement in it, this is a huge game changer. So this is an awesome strategy from a transactional funder perspective. So with that kind of gives you an idea of like what loan products that you would have in your business. So again, these are the three types that I fund myself. How do you get started, guys? So really, you need to figure out what your lending box is. So what I mean by that is you need to determine what is the criteria that you will broadcast to everyone that, hey, this is what I lend on. These are the funding limits, and then these are my prices. So that you need to figure that out. Once you've got that figured out, then you need to understand title and escrow. You need to understand how the real estate transaction actually works. So you need to actually have a good understanding of title companies, title attorneys. It's very state by state. Again, going back to your lending box, are you going to lend nationwide? And if you're lending nationwide, you need to have a good, solid understanding of how title and escrow works within each of the individual states. There are some nuances, and especially when it comes to the laws. Then from there, you need to build a list of wholesalers and investors. These are going to be your leads coming into the business. That's an important item. And then you're going to set your terms and fees. Again, this is also part of your lending box. And then you need to create a process. So how are people going to interact with you? You're going to have some type of intake. How do they request funds? How do you fulfill those funds? And then how are you going to fund? And then you just rinse and repeat. So you need to make sure you have a good process in place. Make it easy for people to come to you. Outside of that, how you get started is you partner with someone that actually knows what they're doing. Now, if any of this interests you, I actually have a referral program for my lending business where you can actually do this as far as getting started with someone that is involved in this business. You can start referring for me, and I've got really great payouts for that. I can also involve you in the process so you have a good understanding, so you can get some insights to how these deals are funded, so you can maybe start this business up your own. But again, I treat my referral partners very well. If you want to, you can just go to my website. That's in the description below, and then you just go to the referral page, and that's how you get into that. Or you can take a look at this next video where I'm going to detail you one of these strategies even further to kind of go into the nuts and bolts of it, so you can get better insights on that. And with that, I will catch you on the next one, guys. I hope this was helpful.